A single clip, less than 20 seconds long. And yet, it sent Buckingham Palace into full lockdown mode. In a moment never meant to be seen, Queen Camilla was caught making a private, deeply unsettling comment about Princess Charlotte, and when the footage leaked, even senior royals were left reeling. What did she say? And why was the palace so desperate to hide it? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It all began with what was meant to be an innocuous royal engagement, a quiet charity appearance, free from public spectacle, carefully choreographed for minimal press disruption. The usual protocols were in place: limited press access, discreet audio surveillance, and carefully filtered footage distributed only to approved media outlets. But one rogue clip slipped through, unedited, raw, and unmistakably real. In it, Queen Camilla can be heard turning to an aide and muttering a remark about Princess Charlotte that would change the tone of the monarchy overnight. Her words weren't loud, but they were sharp, and the condescension in her tone was impossible to deny. Within hours of surfacing online, the video was flagged, removed, and scrubbed from nearly every platform, but the damage had already been done. It had been seen. It had been heard. And most importantly, it had been recorded. The palace's initial response was swift but strategic. The comment had been taken out of context, they insisted. A private joke misunderstood, a moment misinterpreted. But the public wasn't buying it. Within 3 hours, Princess Charlotte's name trended globally, with millions rallying around a child they believed had been targeted by the Queen Consort herself. The outrage wasn't just about what was said, it was about who said it, and the implications it carried. For a woman who had spent decades carving her place in the royal family, Camilla's remark revealed a side many suspected but never confirmed. And now, the footage had done what no scandal before could. It shattered the carefully cultivated image of unity. By the next morning, journalists were circling like vultures. Multiple outlets confirmed the video's authenticity. Leaked from within the palace itself, the clip's source was traced to a junior staffer with limited clearance, someone now no longer in service, according to insiders. But the leak's precision raised new questions. Was it intentional? Was it a warning? Or was it an act of retaliation from someone tired of protecting the crown's fractured image? Whatever the motive, one thing became certain. The palace had lost control of its narrative, and the public wasn't waiting for their permission to respond. But to understand how one whispered comment became a royal crisis, we must examine the silent tensions that had been building long before the cameras ever rolled. She's young, poised, and already drawing comparisons to her grandmother Diana. But behind the scenes, Princess Charlotte has become a symbol of something far greater, an heir to more than the throne. And for Camilla, that legacy may have always been a threat in disguise. Charlotte's rise in the public eye wasn't engineered, it was organic. With every gesture, every glance caught by the cameras, the public saw echoes of a past they hadn't let go of. The grace of Diana, the composure of Catherine, and beneath it all, a spark that seemed uniquely hers. For royal watchers and insiders alike, it became impossible to ignore. Charlotte wasn't just another child in the line of succession, she was quietly becoming the face of its future. And in the shadows of that ascent, tensions began to simmer. Camilla, once at the center of the monarchy's narrative shift, was being pushed further into the periphery, not by scandal this time, but by a child whose very presence rekindled a collective memory the palace had tried for years to contain. The media didn't help. Headlines began to crown Charlotte as the People's Princess too, a comparison both flattering and politically volatile. Editorials lauded her presence, her charm, her natural ability to connect with people even at such a young age. And though the palace issued no formal reaction, insiders say the whispers within the royal household were deafening. Camilla, who had fought decades to escape the shadow of Diana's ghost, now found herself eclipsed by Diana's granddaughter. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was unbearable. Staff reported subtle signs of strained tensions at joint engagements, awkward seating arrangements, carefully staged photo ops where proximity spoke louder than press releases. And through it all, Catherine remained watchful, protective, knowing the weight of public perception could either nurture or shatter her daughter's future. Yet what truly stung wasn't the media frenzy, it was what Camilla said behind closed doors. Aides began to notice comments, made in jest but laced with something colder, remarks about Charlotte's perfect little image, mutterings about the performance, and insinuations that Catherine was grooming her daughter for something more than tradition allowed. These weren't policy debates. These were personal attacks, subtle enough to deny but sharp enough to wound. And while the palace dismissed them as idle chatter, those closest to Catherine knew better. They had seen this pattern before: jealousy wrapped in civility, power cloaked in smile. Still, no one expected those private thoughts to become public until a royal charity event turned into the palace's worst nightmare. The event was polished, rehearsed, and press-controlled until one stray lens captured the moment that would crack the royal facade. Hidden in background chatter, Camilla's voice surfaced, unmistakable, and her words left the room ice-cold. It was supposed to be nothing more than another well-managed public appearance. A charity gala featuring senior royals, with pre-cleared press passes, choreographed photo opportunities, and a timeline scripted down to the minute. The palace had gone to great lengths to ensure the event would project unity. But within the carefully guarded structure of that day, an independent videographer invited through a secondary sponsor caught more than anyone expected. Positioned at the edge of the main stage, their equipment was left rolling between interviews, capturing ambient chatter as guests shuffled in and out of frame. And on that audio track, layered under the polite hum of post-speech applause, was a conversation not meant for the public. Camilla, in a private moment with a senior aide, leaned in and said 6 words that would change everything. She's already playing the part, perfectly. Lows. At first, it wasn't even noticed. The footage, stored and filed away, nearly vanished into routine archives. But a freelance editor, contracted to trim clips for promotional use, heard the line and froze. The voice wasn't generic. It was clear, deliberate, and chillingly pointed. The palace had been caught mid-whisper, and what they said, and whom they said it about, could not be dismissed. The context was unmistakable, the timing inescapable. The phrase, paired with Camilla's visible glance toward Charlotte's official portrait just moments earlier, told a story far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. An audio expert was brought in to verify the clip's authenticity. Despite background noise, there was no doubt the frequency matched Camilla's voice, and the tone was unmistakably sardonic. Palace officials acted immediately. The video was pulled from all official channels, the freelance editor's access was revoked, and within hours, the staff member who had coordinated the external media presence was escorted off the property, their contract terminated under a non-disclosure clause. But that move came too late. The file had already been duplicated, the comment had been shared, and the whispers inside the royal circle grew louder. What followed was not just a reaction, it was a reckoning. Because while the palace braced for headlines, what truly unnerved insiders wasn't just the leak, it was the clarity of Camilla's tone. The knowing edge. The implicit challenge. The sense that behind the polished royal exterior lay something brittle and sharp, a battle for image, influence, and control that had now erupted into public view. As the palace scrambled to control the damage, it became clear this wasn't just about a comment. It was about control, power, and a rivalry no one wanted to admit existed. She said nothing publicly. She didn't need to. The shift in Catherine's demeanour told the entire story. Behind palace walls, insiders say the Princess of Wales was incandescent with rage, and for the first time, she directly challenged the Queen Consort's authority. The moment the clip reached Catherine's desk, the atmosphere in her private residence shifted. Those closest to her described a silence so thick it became suffocating. There was no disbelief, only clarity. In that fleeting, offhand remark, Catherine heard not just judgment, but contempt. For her daughter, for her parenting, for the very image of the future she had worked tirelessly to protect. Within hours, a private meeting was arranged, not a confrontation in the traditional sense, but a closed-door reckoning that had been a long time coming. Multiple aides confirmed they were stationed just outside the room. Voices were low, but the intensity was unmistakable. And though the exchange was never officially documented, the aftermath left no room for doubt. Catherine, with years of restraint under her belt, finally let go of protocol. She reportedly looked Camilla in the eye and accused her of mocking a child for being loved. The words were simple, but the weight behind them cracked the formal facade. Camilla, according to sources, attempted to deflect, insisting the comment had been misinterpreted, that it was never meant for public ears. But Catherine didn't flinch. She didn't negotiate. For the first time, she drew a boundary not around herself, but around her daughter. That meeting ended not in resolution, but in cold avoidance, and it showed in every appearance that followed. When the Waleses next appeared alongside Camilla, royal observers noted the shift. The warmth was gone. The coordinated smiles now appeared forced. William, ever the mediator, was visibly torn. Caught between the role of future king and present husband, his silence in those moments was deafening. Behind the scenes, staff whispered of schedules being subtly altered, ensuring Charlotte would no longer share stages or frames with Camilla for the foreseeable future. What had once been an invisible line of civility was now unmistakably visible. Those who had worked with the family the longest described the growing divide as a frost that settled over the palace. Catherine's fury wasn't loud. It was deliberate, controlled, and far more dangerous because of it. She didn't launch a public campaign. She didn't leak her side. Instead, she turned her focus inward toward her children, her role, and the public who were now watching not just a future queen, but a mother defending her daughter with quiet fire. But while Catherine's fury stayed contained within palace walls, public fury exploded far beyond them. The internet erupted. Within hours, millions had seen or heard about the clip. But this time, the narrative didn't bend in Camilla's favor. Across social media, the hashtag number Protect Charlotte surged like a tidal wave, and the monarchy could no longer control the storm. It began with a single upload, reshared by a junior journalist who questioned why the footage was being scrubbed so aggressively. Then came the comments, the hashtags, the threads, and within 6 hours, the clip had exploded across platforms, ricocheting from Twitter to TikTok to encrypted group chats and back again. Influencers picked it up, adding captions like "disgraceful" and "leave the kids alone." Activists weighed in, calling the monarchy emotionally corrosive and out of touch with its own legacy. Even former royals, long silenced by decorum or distance, couldn't ignore the uproar, some offering cryptic reactions, others delivering sharp and public rebukes. In one striking instance, a family member aligned with the late Princess Diana posted a black and white image of Charlotte with a single word beneath it: enough. What followed was a seismic shift in public sentiment. Polls showed Camilla's favorability ratings plummeting overnight. Once seen as a woman who had weathered decades of scrutiny with quiet endurance, she was now painted as a figure of cold elitism. The fact that the comment targeted a child made it unforgivable in the eyes of many. The press had long danced around the idea of generational conflict within the palace, but now, with this moment exposed, they pounced. Headlines from around the world dug deep, resurfacing past footage of Camilla's interactions with Charlotte. Every brief glance, every stiff expression, every poorly timed gesture was now reinterpreted as potential evidence of a long-brewing resentment. Tabloids had a field day. Camilla's cold shoulder dominated front pages. Panels debated the monarchy's failure to adapt to an era of emotional transparency. And perhaps most tellingly, the clip wasn't dismissed as a scandal, it was embraced as a symbol. A symbol of everything the public feared still lurked behind the monarchy's carefully curated smiles. Within 72 hours, online petitions demanding a formal apology to Princess Charlotte soared past 1 million signatures. The palace, caught flat-footed, issued no immediate response, and that silence only deepened the outrage. For the royal family, the damage wasn't just public, it was structural. Staffers began reporting rising tensions behind closed doors, divisions in messaging strategy, and conflicting orders about how to handle press inquiries. Some aides refused to defend Camilla's position. Others tried, but privately admitted the crisis was spiraling beyond anyone's reach. One source inside the communications team described the atmosphere as bunker mode panic. Another said bluntly, "We've lost the room, and now we might be losing each other." As pressure mounted from all sides, a rare internal divide began to take shape, splitting the senior royals into camps of silence, support, and something far more dangerous: sabotage. Camilla had her allies, Catherine had her defenders, and caught between them was a monarchy on the brink. For the first time since the Sussex fallout, insiders say the royal household fractured again, only this time the fault line ran through Charlotte. The moment public sentiment swung, the palace's internal unity collapsed. Behind the stone walls of Buckingham, once whispered frustrations erupted into open division. Camilla, reeling from the backlash, withdrew from public life, but found support in King Charles and a close-knit circle of senior advisors determined to shield her from what they described as an orchestrated humiliation. Their position was clear. The Queen Consort had made a mistake, yes, but to allow that moment to dismantle decades of hard-fought public rehabilitation would be a grave injustice. These loyalists insisted on silence, on weathering the storm, on preserving the institution by preserving Camilla. But not everyone agreed. Princess Anne, known for her candor and loyalty to tradition, was reportedly disgusted not just by the comment itself, but by the refusal to show public contrition. In private discussions, she is said to have questioned why the monarchy would defend cruelty cloaked in protocol, especially toward a child. Her disappointment wasn't theatrical, it was principled. Meanwhile, Edward and Sophie found themselves walking a precarious line, urging for unity while pushing for a softer, more compassionate response. But their efforts were drowned out by the rising voices on both extremes. At the center of the firestorm stood William, a future king now pulled between two immovable forces, his wife and his stepmother. Every decision he made, every appearance, every silence, was interpreted as alignment or betrayal. Those close to him revealed the strain was beginning to show. Meetings were shorter, his tone sharper. He no longer trusted his inner circle, fearing leaks, fearing manipulation. Catherine, for her part, remained composed. But she no longer waited for the palace to take the lead. Her supporters within the press, among staff, and in private aristocratic circles began subtly pressuring for an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, not a media stunt, not a vague statement, a real, formal recognition that what had happened was unacceptable. The atmosphere inside the palace grew toxic. Leaks became routine. Memos were rerouted. Communications staff were pitted against each other. Even the Queen's personal aides began whispering about their concerns, with some refusing to attend joint briefings involving both camps. This wasn't just disagreement, it was political warfare masked by ceremony. And all of it was rooted in one moment, one comment, one child. But as the senior royals struggled to contain a scandal of their own making, an unexpected twist emerged. One that not only reframed the entire conflict, but reopened a buried wound long believed forgotten. And then came the twist no one expected. A letter, handwritten and ancient, reopened a royal wound that could no longer be ignored. It had sat sealed for over 2 decades, addressed to "my granddaughter, wherever she may be." But when Princess Diana's forgotten letter surfaced in a royal archive, its contents shook the family to its core and cast Camilla's words in a new, devastating light. The letter was discovered during a routine review of archival materials slated for digitization. Nestled between personal correspondences and state-related documentation, it had been mistakenly filed under anonymous notes until an aide, struck by the familiar slant of the handwriting, pulled it aside. Upon authentication, the realization set in. This was Diana's voice, echoing from a time when the monarchy was already fraying at the edges. The envelope bore no name, only a phrase: "For my granddaughter, wherever she may be." Inside, the words were heartbreakingly clear. Diana wrote not of titles or thrones, but of identity, of womanhood, of survival in a world that weaponized legacy. "Some will try to silence her," she warned. "Let her speak. Her voice will be the echo I was never allowed to finish." The emotional impact of the discovery was immediate. The letter was authenticated by two separate handwriting experts and Diana's former private secretary, who remembered her drafting private messages to her sons and speculative future family members. But this was something different. It wasn't just maternal foresight, it was prophecy, and in the context of the scandal engulfing Charlotte, it read like a posthumous condemnation. Diana, silenced by circumstance, had predicted the exact struggle her granddaughter now symbolized, being adored, being doubted, and being quietly attacked for embodying a light others found threatening. When Catherine was handed the letter in private, those present say she read it once, then again, and wept, not just for Charlotte, but for the woman whose shadow still lingered over the monarchy, whose legacy was now weaponized not by outsiders, but from within the family itself. William, upon reading the letter, requested time alone with it. Later that same evening, he was seen at the family's private chapel, where he quietly placed a folded note beside the open envelope. Its contents remain unknown, but the gesture was clear. He was no longer just a son or a father. He was now the steward of two legacies colliding in one child's name. The letter's existence was never meant for public consumption, but once confirmed, it was impossible to contain. A leaked image of the envelope, its faded ink, and the unmistakable signature circulated online, and within hours, it became a global symbol. Posts bearing Diana's quote were shared millions of times. Young women, royalists, and critics alike all rallied around one shared truth. This was bigger than scandal. This was history refusing to stay buried. A moment of truth wrapped in ink and foresight. Faced with the weight of history, legacy, and public fury, the palace had no choice but to act, and what followed stunned even the most seasoned royal watchers. For the first time in years, the palace released a public statement, not just about a scandal, but acknowledging emotional harm. But behind the careful wording was something far more telling: Camilla's absence from the next 3 royal engagements. The statement came not from the Queen Consort's office, but from King Charles himself, a subtle but unmistakable shift in positioning. In the carefully curated language, the palace acknowledged the hurt caused by unguarded words during a private conversation, a phrase that confirmed the authenticity of the moment without ever naming the speaker, the victim, or the context. It was a masterclass in containment, designed to appease the public while preserving the institution. But what it didn't say spoke volumes. No apology, no direct ownership, just the faintest flicker of admission, flickering beneath the weight of royal protocol. Simultaneously, Camilla's schedule was quietly wiped clean. No public outings, no speeches, no photo ops. Officially, it was a rest period. Unofficially, it was damage control. Her absence was not framed as punishment, but insiders knew better. The backlash had grown too loud, the symbolism too sharp. Any appearance beside Charlotte, or worse, beside Catherine, would have been disastrous. For 2 weeks, Camilla vanished from the public eye, while speculation mounted behind the gates. Was it voluntary? Was it forced? And more importantly, was it enough? Then came the moment the public had been waiting for. Catherine and Charlotte made their first joint appearance since the scandal broke at a children's literacy initiative tied to Diana's charitable legacy. But this time, there were no senior royals flanking them. No Charles, no Camilla, no buffer. The message was deliberate. It wasn't just about presence, it was about protection. Observers noted William's body language throughout the event. Closely watching, gently shielding, never more than a step away from his daughter. It was the quiet posture of a man who had chosen a side and was no longer afraid to show it. Within palace walls, the impact rippled hard and fast. Aides were summoned. An internal review began, targeting the communication breakdown that had allowed the footage to leak, the response to stall, and the damage to metastasize. New restrictions were placed on media access. Staff turnover, long rumored, began quietly accelerating. And in private meetings, Charles reportedly began reassessing not just roles, but narratives, who would speak for the monarchy going forward, and who had lost the trust to do so. Public reaction to the statement was mixed. Some called it too little, too late. Others saw it as the first crack in an institution that had for too long refused to acknowledge emotional harm. But one thing was clear: the silence had been broken, and with it, the balance of power inside the royal family had begun to shift. But while the palace attempted to rebuild its fractured image, one last confrontation was still to come, and it would take place behind sealed doors, with no cameras, no advisors, just the truth. She's only a child, but in the silence that followed the scandal, Princess Charlotte unknowingly became something more. A symbol, a statement, and perhaps the most dangerous thing in the monarchy, a future queen forged by fire. In the days and weeks after the storm, the palace took decisive action not in front of the cameras, but behind them. Charlotte, once a staple of soft-focus photographs and carefully controlled appearances, was gently pulled back from the spotlight. There were no scheduled walkabouts, no interviews, no commentary. What there was, however, was protection, not silence, not erasure, but a deliberate, measured effort to shield her not from the world, but from the burden of understanding what had just happened. The public had chosen their side. The monarchy knew it, and Catherine, more than anyone, felt the weight of ensuring her daughter would not carry the fallout on her young shoulders. Sources close to the Princess of Wales confirmed what many suspected: private retreats were organised, far from the press, where Catherine could recalibrate and give her daughter something the crown so rarely affords: peace. They visited places with meaning, places tied to Diana's memory, places untouched by scandal. But the silence of those trips wasn't emptiness. It was reflection. For in that space, Catherine was teaching Charlotte a lesson not written in any royal handbook: that dignity often speaks loudest when it chooses not to roar. And yet, behind closed doors, something extraordinary happened. A private meeting, Camilla and Catherine, just the two of them, no aides, no advisors, no press releases. What was said remained sealed in silence, but the timing said enough. The encounter took place after the public statement, after Camilla's retreat from engagements, but before the next family gathering. Whatever passed between them didn't reset the relationship, but it redefined it, not as rivals, not as in-laws, but as women carrying legacies neither of them asked for, yet neither could escape. Meanwhile, the palace began something unexpected: a quiet rebuild of the royal image through the lens of female leadership. Press photos began to shift. Emphasis was placed not on titles, but roles: on strength, on duty, on maternal resilience. And at the center of it all was Charlotte. Without uttering a single word, she became the emotional axis of a story far larger than herself. Social media accounts, influencer circles, and even international outlets began to hail her as the symbol of grace under fire. Fan art circulated, tributes poured in, hashtags like #FutureQueen and #Princess of Purpose gained momentum. Analysts started calling it the Charlotte effect, a surge in support for the monarchy's next generation, rooted not in tradition, but transformation. And in hushed tones among royal historians, one chilling certainty echoed: this moment would shape her. The scandal, the silence, the solidarity. It wouldn't fade, it would mark her, not just as a princess, but as a force. A queen not merely born, but built. In a monarchy built on appearances, it was a hidden moment caught on camera that revealed the most, and for the woman once dubbed Queen of the People, it was a reminder that the future is watching. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.